And what I also find interesting is just sharing it with people, like-minded people like you. So thank you for having me. And let's get started. So, oh, great. This is too fast. Pardon.
It's all good. So, if you want to make that,
I'll read. Yeah. All right.
You got it?
So, yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Okay. So, having steps to prepare yourself mentally is more of just a, having a relationship with your plant is the number one. And there are two things to really keep in mind is that plants have needs, right? And they, unlike us, they don't have wants, they just have needs. And it's up to us to satiate that, because the only thing that they can produce for themselves is sugars, which they get from light. And so recognizing that is about setting up a sort of like a contract with your plant. And I'm talking like this on a more of a meta level, because it spares the disappointment of, oh man, I bought this plant, why did it die? And rather it sets up a consciousness that says, what steps can I take to prevent that from happening? And what steps can I take to make it thrive? So first off, any kind of plant, right? They have very specific conditions. Most of that, for the purposes of this for this presentation, we're just going to go over two of the main facts that are of plants. Is that there's watering, and they have signs that show you that watering is being done incorrectly. So it's a fact in the work that I do that overwatering is the number one killer. 90% of cases of, oh, my plant looks bad, is attributed to it being overwatered. So the sign of overwatering in almost every single plant that there is that the tips of the margin of a leaf is going to be bright yellow, and eventually a brown tip appears, follow after the brown tip shows, and then followed by yellow. So what I want to show first is that the leaf is like a book in which that it's showing you the history of what had happened. So let's take overwatering. You see a big yellow tip on a leaf, and it eventually becomes brown. That shows that there was cellular damage, and that cellular damage happened because overwatering causes the turgor pressure in the cells of the plant to move towards the body. Everything is distributed in the plant's body, but gravity tends to take spare molecules of water and bring them towards the tips of a leaf. And so think of it as like essentially drowning is what's happening. And the best way to check for that is the soil. So if you see yellow leaves, if you see brown tips, followed by yellow leaves, you're going to know that it's overwatering, because the soil is sopping wet or not the right amount of dry. So we're going to go over that right amount of dry. When you're dealing with overwatering, most of the solution is that there are types of plants, and this is a good, what you see in the pictures here are mostly a synopsis of what these plants are, that they can't handle being overwatered. You got your dragon trees, your fig trees, your umbrella trees, your snake plants, your ZZ plants, parlor palms, and a bunch of other stuff that I couldn't fit in pictures, but um, succulents, cacti, sago palms, yuccas, uh, all of those, they can't handle an incorrect watering. And the way to get the correct watering is, before each watering, the soil has to be super. Okay, what we have. The soil has to dry out 1 to 2 inches before each watering. So you want to make sure that before you water each time, you got to have 1 to 2 inches dry, and that's for these kinds of plants. There are plants that do like to have maybe only 1/2 inch to 1 inch of the soil be dry between waterings, and that's going to be fishtail palms, birds of paradise, peace lilies, and ferns. That are the ones that really like that, and they can handle a little bit more moisture. Granted, lighting is the other key factor, and when when there are appropriate conditions in terms of lighting, then a plant can function well. It's a fact that you just can't stuff a snake plant into a closet and expect it to live. So it does need light. And when people say low light plant, what they're all implying is that it's receiving filtered indirect light. Generally, houseplants will be burnt. You'll see like little brown holes in the leaves. That's usually an indication of too much light, too much radiant energy burning the cells of a leaf. So generally, as a rule of thumb, then a plant likes to usually be in east or west facing window, or pulled back a couple of feet from a south facing window. In conclusion, now that you have these factors and you have these signs, and understanding of these signs and where to look is the soil. That's the fact. And then things like humidity, soil composition, nutrients that you get from fertilizer, that's kind of secondary, and it's too complicated for right now. And that is all.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Let's see. So we'll move into about 5 minutes of Q&A. See where that gets us. Does anyone have their hand up yet? Awesome. I'm gonna take a second and ask a question. So I have and I see 2 other people have raised hands as well. I have orchids, the kind that grow in the bark. So I think they're oh gosh, Phalaenopsis orchids, I think. Those are trickier because there's not really like soil you can poke your finger into. It's just bark, and I'm wondering what the signs are. Obviously, like I look at the leaves and I can tell if it's over or underwatered, but like what would the signs be for that? Because I know a lot of people might have orchids as well.
Right. Phalaenopsis, in terms of trying to read soil, it is tricky because it is a epiphytic plant. So when you're trying to read bark, it is trickier than soil. The thing is that over time, depends on how long you've had it in that bark and how much you replenish the bark, but over time, the first inch or so of that bark is going to be discolored. And then that's how you know it's between waterings, right? So you water it topically on its bark or soil, and it's going to be a kind of like a discolored red or discolored brown. and then when you water it, it turns dark again, right? So you want that that bark to turn completely discolored between the next watering.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's see. I want to go to Rena, who hasn't gotten to ask a question yet.
Hi. Tom and I, hi, we're in the inner Richmond of San Francisco, just got a basil plant in a pot. So we cheated. We got it from the supermarket and it's like nice and healthy. And the directions say bright light and keep moist, but I don't want to obviously overwater it. What do you recommend for a culinary basil plant?
Yeah. So basils have to have, first off, bright light, but they don't like to be drowned. And indoor, they're a little trickier. They're not, rather than outdoor, our climate is too saline for them. So it's okay to keep them indoors, but try to keep it in a south-facing window where it gets a lot of light. And if you can't do that, an overhead light, like a lamp, to supplement, whatever it's not getting. And I would recommend, when you see the roots at the bottom poking out, repot it and make sure that drainage is absolutely perfect. That as in the second you water it, a second later, water comes out from the bottom. And you can keep the little saucer with water in it, because basil actually also likes good humidity. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's see. It's hard to figure out how to go in order here. We'll go ahead and do Chaz next.
Okay, so if you're trying to figure out a good watering schedule for a plant that you haven't looked up information on yet, what would you say is a good frequency to check the soil after a watering for when it has discolored? Like every half hour, every hour? What do you?
To check for discoloration, you wait between generally 2 to 3 weeks between waterings. So I don't water my plants weekly. I water them on they are on about a bi-weekly or 3 weeks basis. So I'm going to pull up one of my favorites here, which you can see the soil very visibly.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see that this soil is very grayish there. And
yeah.
So the grayish says, I gotta get water. And last time I watered this, it was about 2 weeks ago. Another one is, we'll take it, this guy, this Comelina. That soil is dark because it was watered a couple of days ago. And I'm not gonna water this guy until, about 2 inches of this soil dries out.
Okay, cool.
Excellent. I want to go to Nate.
I actually had a follow-on question from the basil one, which is, because obviously for those types of plants, you're like harvesting the leaves. So is there like some sort of methodology between how you should harvest it in order to not kill it? Like obviously you don't take all the leaves off, right? But
right.
Yeah.
So the best way that's safest for the plant, this goes into a conversation about pruning and trimming. So in the simplest way, herbs like those, you have to let them grow multiple branches. And to do that is to always cut off 3 inches down from the apical meristem, which is the very top of the growth. So you snip that off, wait for a second branch or second or third. Every time you cut off the apical meristem, there's always going to be another branch that's going to shoot up. And so eventually what's going to happen of keep on cutting those is that it's going to get very bushy and compact, and which is actually excellent for harvesting, because it just tells the plant, oh, I keep getting cut back, I should produce more. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.